Hi, good afternoon, everyone. This is Margot Navins with Fidelity Charitable, and we're just going to give folks another minute or two to gather, and then we'll get started. So kick back, relax, and enjoy the music. All right. Well, thank you, Danielle, for the musical intro. Hope everybody was enjoying a little bit of a break and a little bit of a musical interlude. My name is Margot Navins. I'm a charitable planning consultant with Fidelity Charitable. I'm thrilled that this group is taking time out of what we know are really busy days and busy schedules to join us here as we're closing out Women's History Month at the end of March for a really important and really timely and topical conversation about women in giving. Before we get started in any sort of our formal remarks, I'd love to just pop up a poll here and see of the folks who have joined us, how many of you have participated in events, whether it's anything related to Women's History Month. We'll watch the results come in. All right, pretty even, I would say. Oh, we're still going. Okay, so I think these are the final results. It looks like 63% of you on the phone. This is your first Women's History Month event that you've attended this month. It looks like almost 40% of you have attended something in the past. So we are happy that you're here, and we're excited to have this conversation with all of you today. So if we go to the next slide, I am joined today by my partner and my colleague, Danielle Kelly. I'm based in the tri-state area. I'm based in New York. Together, Danielle and I serve as dedicated resources for our advisor community in the tri-state area. So we spend our time, and I'm seeing lots of wonderful and familiar faces, or not faces, but names joining on the webinar. We spend our days with investment advisors and family offices, with attorneys and with accountants, really having deep conversations about what are the trends that we're seeing in the charitable landscape, and how are people thinking about and using donor advised funds really in different and creative ways. So again, we're dedicated resources for all of you. And a bit about Fidelity Charitable. Some of you on the line are familiar, but we're a 501c3 public charity, and our charitable mission is very simple. Grow the American tradition of philanthropy by providing programs that make giving accessible, simple, and effective. How we do that is we operate a donor advised fund program. And we are really proud. We were founded in 1991. We are celebrating our 30th birthday this year. And so in our 30 years since our inception, our 250,000 donors to Fidelity Charitable have granted out of their accounts over $51 billion to over 300,000 nonprofits. So that makes us the largest grant maker in the United States, and it makes us just really, really proud of what we're doing. And it would not be possible without the great engagement and support from all of you. So as we think about the donor advised fund, really the easiest way to remember how it works and to explain it to somebody else is in three very simple steps: give, grow, and grant. So step one, donors have the ability to contribute into account. We have no minimum, so donors can establish this account at any amount. And when they give into the account is when they're eligible to take an immediate tax deduction. So in this first step, of course, we see people funding their accounts with cash. A really good candidate for funding a charitable gift is highly appreciated, long-term, publicly traded stock. The donor gets two great benefits. They get the fair market value tax deduction when the shares are contributed, and they avoid paying the capital gains tax when that appreciated stock is sold. So we see that highly appreciated publicly traded stock is a great candidate. And then last we see, and we've seen this in our world grow over time, the interest in the ability for people to donate private business interests or private stock as a way to fund their giving. So you might think of this is our ability to work with folks in the hedge fund and private equity worlds. It's our ability to work with business owners, real estate developers. We have the ability to take in cryptocurrency. So for your clients and donors in the crypto space, we're very busy right now in that realm. But the first step is really identify the most efficient asset, use that to fund your giving, and take an immediate tax deduction. Step number two is funds can be invested, and growth in this account, it's tax-free and it's simply more money that you have to give away. And step number three is where our donors get to have all their fun. In a minimum of $50, donors can make grant recommendations to any 501c3 public charity. So as we think about our roadmap for our conversation today, I'm going to start us off by taking a quick step back and looking at the charitable landscape and the role of women. Second, I'll take us through what are some of the ways that women are giving, why and how are women giving. Danielle will step in and she'll talk about the charitable giving conversation in the context of a larger legacy planning conversation and family planning conversation. And last, Danielle will take us through impact investing. And we just continue to see a really strong correlation. Women are driving interest in impact investing, and they play a powerful role in philanthropy. And there's a lot of really good opportunities for overlap there. Before I dive in, just one housekeeping note. This presentation is eligible for CFP credit. We know you came for the good music and of course the good content, but the bonus is you're going to get some CFP credit. So we will follow up with all of you via email, and Danielle will be sure to touch on this at the end, but we'll be certain to get you your CFP credit. Okay, so I think in this conversation, it's really helpful to take a quick step back and put this conversation in context. So Giving USA releases a report each year in June of the prior year's findings. So we're still awaiting the report this coming June, but the most recent statistics is as of 2019. So in 2019, $449 billion was given to charity. And if you just take a moment and let that number sink in, $449 billion was in motion and earmarked for charitable purposes. It's tremendous. I think very important for this group on the phone, 69% of that came from individual donors. So that means it came from clients like yours, prospects like yours, donors like yours. So the opportunity in the charitable landscape and the opportunity to engage your clients, prospects, and donors in this meaningful conversation is tremendous. Fidelity Charitable, we release a giving report each year. So we do have our findings from 2020. And in 2020, our donors granted $9.1 billion out of their accounts to nonprofit organizations. So for grant dollars, that is up 24% over the prior year. And from a volume perspective, it's up 31%. So what we saw in our world last year was just unbelievable generosity in dollars, as well as in volume of grants that our donors were recommending. And so again, as we're thinking about setting the stage here and thinking about the landscape of philanthropy, we have to talk about 2020 and what we saw in our world. So, if you take yourself back a year ago, March 2020, there's a global pandemic and everyone's working from home. There's tremendous volatility and uncertainty in the markets. It all painted and illustrated this incredible story about donors who had a planned giving vehicle. So think of your clients or your donors that have a donor advised fund, that have a private foundation. They have an account at their local community foundation. These are donors who proactively set aside a charitable pool of dollars, and maybe they funded this account 5 years ago or 10 years ago. But what they have done over time is created this ready reserve of charitable dollars that can be deployed at any time. And so what we saw from our Fidelity charitable donors this exact time last year was donors were giving earlier in the year than they normally give. So our grant volumes in March, April, May, significantly higher than those months in the past. One of the great things that we saw is donors continued to give to their regular nonprofits or the organizations that they give to on an annual basis. What we saw was they increased what they were giving. So in addition to giving to their 8 or 10, sort of regular charities, we saw people give additionally to organizations that commonly fell under the human services umbrella. But I would say more specifically, we saw tremendous outpouring of support for organizations related to food security. So if you look at it nationwide, our donors giving to food-related organizations increased 667% year over year. And Danielle and we're in this in the tri-state area, and so in our tri-state area, giving to food-related organizations was up 882%. So we all were watching the news, we're all living in this environment, and there is so much need. But I have to say, we felt really, really good every day, even though we had our own challenges. Donors were giving, and they were giving very, very generously. And one last thing, and it's incredibly important in tandem with what we were seeing last year, in addition to relief for the pandemic and for COVID response, we did also see, and we continue to see, tremendous support for racial equity and social justice issues. It's incredibly important to our donors, and we've definitely seen really good engagement from them on that front as well. So we've taken a look at the charitable landscape kind of big picture, and now we'll talk about where women play a really important role. So women control more than half of the private wealth in the United States, and they make 80% of purchases. Additionally, $41 trillion is going to transfer generations over the next 35 years. And of the $41 trillion that will be in motion, 70% of it will land in the hands of a woman. And when you think about the way that women give, women typically give 3.5% of their wealth to charity, when compared to men that give 1.8% of their wealth. So again, we looked at the big charitable landscape, the tremendous amount of money in motion, and really the incredible opportunity. And then when you hone in on the role that women play, women are decision makers, women will be the inheritors, and women are incredibly generous. So it's this really powerful intersection and really highlights the importance of this conversation that we're having today. So we looked at the landscape, and now we're going to talk about how and why women are giving. So one of the things that we continue to see is women are eager to learn, and they're ready to soak in information from a variety of sources. So we see women looking for education and for knowledge around their charitable giving from their peers. We see women looking to have conversations about the way they give socially, out at dinner, having cocktails, socially gathering with people. We also see that women are very receptive, and I think it's important for this particular group that's on the phone, they're receptive to the one-on-one conversation. So women want to be informed and they want to have the education, and sitting down one-on-one with a nonprofit or with an advisor is something that they're not only receptive to, but something that they're really looking for. We see women certainly gathering intel and information from inside their communities. Women are involved, they are volunteering, they are active in their communities, and through these experiences, they are engaging board members, they're engaging their colleagues that also sit on the town council or whatever it might be. But women are active in their communities, and they use it as a sense to use it as an opportunity to draw and learn from other folks in that space. Family settings, absolutely, we see that women are very interested in having this conversation with their partners and with their families. And I would say last, and we've seen an increase in this over the last year due to the virtual world, women are inclined to seek out some formal learning. So it might be they join a giving circle, it might be that they're joining webinars and they are reading more and they're just engaging. There's so much content out there right now. And again, particularly in the virtual environment where you don't have to travel and go places, women are really seeking out that more formal learning. Now, when you compare women and the way that they give to men and the way that they give, just a few highlights for you. So women tend to give across a larger number of organizations. Men are more inclined to give to a smaller amount and sort of concentrate their giving among smaller number of organizations. We find the studies show that women volunteer more than men. And then I think very interestingly, women more inclined to be collaborative in their giving and participate in something like a giving circle. So one of the things that we hope you walk away from this presentation and this conversation with is really good nuggets and good ideas for when you are thinking about approaching your women clients, prospects, and donors. What are some of the things you should have in mind, and what are some of the things in your toolkit that you can use? So we're going to take a look at millennial women givers and boomer women givers. We're going to highlight some of the ways that they approach this conversation in different ways. We'll tie it all together with how they approach this conversation in a similar and very important way. But hopefully some of these tidbits will help arm you with some good tools in your toolkit as you're engaging your women clients in this conversation. So on the left-hand side, we'll take a look at the millennials. So millennials, they're more likely to give from their heart. They are more likely to encourage others to join in. They want to tell everybody about the organizations that they're giving to, and they want you to support them too. We find that millennials also more apt to give in the moment, give kind of spur of the moment, give in the moment. And when you compare that to the boomers are more likely to have a plan. right? They're a little more strategic in the way they give. And what the studies have found is because they are more apt to have a plan and have a strategy, they're pretty methodical and they follow their strategy each step of the way. What that means is they're typically happy. They typically are satisfied and they feel gratified and good about their charitable giving because they followed their plan. Now we'll look here about some of the really specific ways that millennials are giving versus how boomers are giving. So millennials absolutely more inclined to take advantage of a generous employee match program, workplace giving, um, any kind of other matching programs that might exist. We see millennials really, really active in the crowdfunding space. So think of the last time you logged into Instagram or Facebook, likely one of your friends on Facebook was having a Facebook birthday fundraiser, right? They're posting and saying, it's my birthday, but instead of sending me a gift or something, please make a donation to my fundraiser. People on Instagram are posting about organizations for their fundraising efforts or organizations that they may volunteer for, sit on the board for. The goal for the millennials is they are proud to share their involvement and they would like others to learn about the causes that are important to them too. So it serves many different purposes, but really the goal is to amplify their impact by letting it be really widely known, the different organizations and cause areas that they're interested in. And if you just think about it, and I think we have some nonprofits on the phone, but you know, not only can you mail a check or put your credit card in online, but you can Venmo. I mean, there's all kinds of like very instant ways that people are using to support their nonprofits. And you've seen a lot of the nonprofits really pivot and grow and create ways that they can work with their millennial donors. The last thing I'll highlight with the millennials is, along the lines of this sort of crowdfunding idea, absolutely the idea of giving circles is exploding in the charitable world. People are eager to learn from each other, not only exchanging education and ideas, but people are also interested in the idea that if you are interested in the same thing as someone else, you can pool your assets and not only, again, do you share good information and intel, but together, if you make a financial contribution together, it could be a larger gift that has a greater impact. Now, if we look at the boomers, you'll find a little more traditional on the right-hand side of the slide. So boomers, they are still continuing to give through non-financial gifts. So think of donating clothes, donating household items, donating furniture, like very committed to and interested in giving, in-kind donations. We see a lot of the boomers still very interested in the sponsorships. So think of a spring luncheon. A boomer's inclined to say, I want to be the silver sponsor for the luncheon. So again, it's a little more traditional, super important, really impactful, but just a little bit different than how the millennials are thinking about it. So as you may have gathered along the slides, and probably something you were thinking on your own is, when you're thinking about privacy and the way that people are giving, boomers are really private. Boomers are not likely to be out and about talking about the organizations that they're supporting or a large gift that they may have just made. And that's certainly in contrast to the millennials that are just more open. And so again, hopefully, as you were, following along on those slides and you're thinking about women clients of yours, whether they're boomers or millennials, just having some of these nuggets to carry with you as you're thinking about your next step and engaging them in a meaningful conversation. It is important to just have acknowledgement that they are coming at this conversation in a different way. But I think very nicely, one thing is very consistent with both of these groups, and it's both boomers and millennials think it's very valuable and important to have a conversation about giving with their partners and spouses. So we see this in our conversations, and not only is this important because it helps to bind that relationship and it can help you all deepen your relationships with both the women clients and prospects and donors you're working with, but also with their partner or their spouse. But we also see that once they have this meaningful conversation with their partner or spouse, it can very often lead to a larger conversation that involves their family. And I'll share a quick story as we go to the next slide. At the end of last year, I worked with a wonderful woman. She and her husband had a significant liquidity event earlier in the year in 2020. And her husband was very laser focused on they needed a new estate plan. They needed to hire a new investment manager. They needed to update their beneficiaries. They need to invest the money properly. So there was real laser focus from the husband in that arena. The wife, alternatively, was really interested in the charitable piece, right? She had been giving to charity for a very long time. In her words, she says, I was giving here, I was giving there. I asked her a little bit about what does your history of your giving look like? And she said, oh, I respond when people solicit me, and I don't keep very good records, and I don't keep very good track. Giving's very important to me, but really I could benefit from getting organized around this conversation. So one of the things that she and I did was I armed her with our Family Forward guide from Fidelity Charitable. And if you're not familiar with it, we can share it with you after today, but it's a workbook that will take somebody through an exercise to identify values and cause areas. It helped this particular woman create a mission statement and a budget and a plan for her giving. And she went through this whole exercise. And then, just like the study shows, she went back and she shared it with her husband. And they had this really deep conversation where she shared the process that she went through to create her mission statement and her value statement. And it was interesting because the husband was saying, he said, I've been so focused on getting all of our ducks in a row, and I've had this, long list of things that I've been working towards. He said, but something has been kind of eking me. And it wasn't until they had this conversation that he really realized one of the things that he felt was holding him back was he was making all of these plans so that their wealth could transfer very efficiently to their 2 adult sons. But what he was internally struggling with was, how do we talk to them about it? How do we have this conversation about this significant transfer of wealth? The adult sons didn't quite have an appreciation for just how significant this liquidity event was. And so this conversation was happening in advance of the husband and wife going out to Chicago to see their 2 sons over the holidays, and they were going to be out there for 2 months. And so what they ended up doing was they did the Family Forward Guide exercise. The husband did it separately, and then they did it together. And what it armed them was they flew out to Chicago, they spent Christmas with their 2 adult sons, and it allowed them to sit down, to have a family meeting, and to really clearly articulate, here are our family values. Here's our family mission statement. And it was done in the context of the family's philanthropy and their giving, and really was led all by the wife. And what it led to was it really nicely positioned this open conversation about the larger wealth transfer and how the husband and the wife envision the funds transferring and what they'd like to see their sons do with that wealth, give back, involve their families. So I'm sure you all are thinking about, you have a client or a donor that fits this profile, right? Maybe an unengaged spouse like this couple, not involved in the financial component, but really passionate and really empowered in the charitable conversation. And so I think as you all are thinking about really good people to have this conversation with, Think of couples like the one we just talked about, where a conversation about charitable giving really opened the door to engaging the wife more deliberately. And it also led to a really deep conversation between the husband and wife, and then with their adult sons. So, hopefully you have a good sense of, again, not only the charitable landscape, but thinking really about women givers, why they give, how they give. And I'm going to turn it over to Danielle to take us through how this charitable giving conversation really plays nicely into a larger legacy planning conversation.
Yeah, thanks, Margot. I appreciate it. And I love that story. It so well highlights a common theme that we see of people who are thinking about their estate plan and what will happen next, and how do we smooth out that transition to the next generation. I would say another common theme that we see with families, as you can see, 9 out of 10 families are discussing their giving at least once a year. Another huge theme that we see is parents or grandparents wanting to engage even younger children. So still in school, still living at home, how do we have that conversation as well? And the favorite thing that I see just with the donor advised fund is we have a great vehicle called a gift for giving. It's like a charitable gift card or a light donor advised fund account. And it allows you to give a gift of a small portion of your own account, say $100, $200, and you send it electronically, and the child or the person who receives the gift is able to go into their light account and make a gift out to any charity that they choose. And I love this. We heard a story that I think it was just the way that it was told that left such an impact on me, but it was pre-COVID times, of course, but a young couple in their late 30s with a 6-year-old daughter. They were going to a gala. Someone in the neighborhood, a small kid, was just diagnosed with leukemia. So the community was coming together. Let's create a gala for to raise money for leukemia research and really show our support for this family. So the husband and wife are getting all dressed up. The wife goes into the daughter's bedroom to say goodbye before they head off, and so of course the daughter's wanting to know where she's going. So the mom explains, we're going to a gala for the young boy down the street who's just diagnosed with leukemia, and we're going to raise some money to find some research to make him better. And she says, well, Mom, I want you to go into my savings account with all of the birthday money that you've been telling me to save, and I want you to give that money away for this research. And of course, the mom was just touched to see a young girl be so compelled to give her hard savings away for a better cause. And she said, you know what, let's do it right now. So of course, she doesn't pull the money out of the savings account, but she goes on her laptop really quick, does the gift for giving to send it to the daughter, and she says, all right, I transferred the money, let's go ahead and let's give it away together. So it was such a great experience and such a great way to connect and show them how the younger generation, you're never too young to make a difference, and just shows you, I mean, of all ages, people are really called to put their money to work and see what difference they can make in the world. So such a great way, and it's such a great opportunity to have that connection and have that conversation with kids of all ages, the next generation. So I loved hearing that story, and I love telling it. It's such a great example of how women of all ages are really making a difference. And as you can see here, it's kind of almost intuitive or inherent in women's nature to be planners. We see that within the women of Fidelity Charitable, our donors here. About half of them, 47%, have their own type of bequest or legacy giving vehicle already established in their will. And on top of that, an additional 17% expect to have a legacy plan in the next 5 years. So an overwhelming majority of our women donors here at Fidelity Charitable are ready to make a plan and put a plan in action. And we even, I'm sure these stories are popping up all around, especially those estate planning attorneys on the call. We've heard you for the last year. We know you have been so busy, as we've all had a heightened awareness of what our legacy is and what plan we already have in place. We had a fabulous, energetic 60-year-old client and donor of ours. She She called us. She retired in the last 3 years, has a lot more time on her hands. And when the pandemic hit and she lost someone close to her, she really realized, I don't have anything in writing. I have no heirs, um, and I'm not married. And so to have that realization that I don't have something ready was really a shocking one. So she called us up, named Fidelity Charitable in all of her estate plans. She wasn't ready to name the charity of which one she wanted to give to. So she named Fidelity Charitable with the intent of changing her successors of the donor advised fund to different organizations. So really, it's just a common thing that we're seeing is people really realizing, I haven't updated my estate plan in 5, 10 years, or things have changed significantly and I've never done it. So it's a really great time to engage our women clients in that planning conversation, because we know that they're already thinking about that already. And leaving the legacy, it can look in a lot of different ways. So like I just explained, it can be naming a bequest or an entity as part of a will or trust, naming charities as your beneficiaries of things like your retirement plan or life insurance policy, or being the beneficiary of a charitable remainder trust or lead trust. This is not an exhaustive list. And I know a lot of you are probably thinking, what about this? What about this? There are tons of ways that we can be having this conversation. But at the end of the day, it all just starts out with the question, is charitable giving something that you want to make part of your legacy? Just one simple question to our clients to start that conversation. That's all it takes to really start engaging our female clients. We know that we're thinking about it, so why don't we just ask? And another interesting thing that we see here is that women, like Margot highlighted earlier, women want to talk to professionals. Margot highlighted how you can see that women are more likely to seek out the advice from professionals and experts, their estate planning attorneys, their advisors, their contacts at the local charities that they work with. Whereas our male counterparts, they're more likely to engage with colleagues or friends, or in a more social setting. Women want to go straight to the experts. So it's a great thing to know that women want to talk to professionals like us in the philanthropic space. And it's such a great opportunity that we have to connect, to learn more about our clients and donors, and really engage them when we move on to other conversations of different work that we do with them as well. So it's good to know that women are here and they want to talk. Something else that we know about women and their tendencies is, of course, generally speaking, women tend to be less confident when talking about their finances. But we also do know that women tend to be fairly confident or very confident with knowing what charities they want to support, what their philanthropic legacy will be. So it's such a great entry point for us who are having different conversations outside of just philanthropy. Why not take something that we know women are extremely confident about in their philanthropy, engage them through that action, and branch off into other types of conversations that they may not be as confident with, such as their finances. And Margot mentioned this earlier, but the unengaged spouse is something that we see way too common, where you meet with a husband and a wife, and the husband maybe do all of the talking, and you don't really get much out of the wife. So philanthropy is a great way to turn the attention to the wife and ask her what her plans for her giving are. Or like Margot said, just the simple question of, how are you giving? What are those tendencies? And let's put a plan in place. It's such a great way to engage that spouse. We see far too common that a woman in transition, whether it be loss of a spouse or divorce, they so often will change everything they've been doing. I'm going to a different financial advisor, estate planning attorney. I'm giving to different charities, because whenever I was in those meetings, they looked and spoke directly at my spouse and never at me. And I'm ready for my voice to be heard, so I'm going elsewhere. It doesn't have to be that way. We can be constantly engaging our women clients through philanthropy. And now is more important than ever because women are taking charge. You hear big names like Mackenzie Scott, former spouse of Jeff Bezos, or Sheryl Sandberg. They are just taking the philanthropic space by storm. I'm sure you've all seen Mackenzie Scott all over the headlines last year. She gave an incredible amount of money to charity, and she wasn't just giving to your big names. She was being really diligent in her research and looking at the different organizations that she wanted to support and really engaging them in a new way. So it's so exciting to see that the microscope shifting away from men and different wealth creators and to the women, and seeing the different tendencies that women have in the space. So now is really an important time to be talking to your women clients about their philanthropy. And when talking about philanthropy, it's not just talking about giving money away, it's also talking about how are we spending or how are we investing the money while we have it. So impact investing is a phrase that I would take a big bet that all of you have heard at least one time in the last 5 or 10 years. And when we look at who's driving the growth behind impact investing, it's women and it's millennials. As you can see here, 84% of women and 86% of millennials have expressed interest in impact investing. So it's no surprise when you see graphs like this to show the total assets in impact investing just increasing exponentially year after year. And this is a trend that we don't expect to see slowing down anytime. So what exactly is impact investing? It's not just a catchphrase. I would argue that it's not even just a trend. It's going to be our new normal soon. So what exactly is impact investing? And it's a good question because it is a lot of different things. I love how this slide lays out because it really is a giant gray area between traditional investing and traditional philanthropy. It's that creativity in between those two things to how do we invest our money in a really cool way. So a couple of different vehicles that it could be are socially responsible ETFs and mutual funds we see a lot of. Socially responsive fixed income, like you see green bonds or different community bonds, or it could be different socially focused VC or hedge funds. We see a lot of even different hedge funds focused for different causes, even such as women and girls issues, or loans, guarantees to nonprofits. Really, we could probably spend an entire hour on impact investing. It's a really, really cool space and it could look a lot of different ways. So I'll share 2 examples of clients who are really tapping into the impact investing in a really cool way. The first is a donor of ours, always had an interest in different causes in Africa. So we're giving to a lot of different international organizations. And she thought, well, what can I take it a little bit further? She was really focused specifically on single mothers in Africa who aren't feeling confident enough to send their children to school. So she started getting involved in giving out microloans to those single mothers to buy things like cell phones, to be in touch with their children, just little things where they can feel confident with sending their children off to school and doing what they needed to do. So taking it one step further, not just giving money away to organizations, but giving microloans out to individuals who need that money to do different things. And the second is, I bet you this might be a common one. You probably a lot of hand raising in this same situation coming across your books. But a younger millennial woman client of ours, she was interested, of course, in climate change and gave a lot of different money away to different organizations who are supporting the cause. Well, her financial advisor, who we work with, he said to her, well, let's take this a step further. Let's take out all fossil fuel companies from where your money's invested with me. And that way you can support the cause with not only just where you're giving money away, but where you're investing it now. So again, it's just taking what we're already doing and thinking, how can I take this one step further? So it's really cool. This is a trend that we love to see. We love having these conversations. And we're seeing so many of our donors take it a really, really unique way, taking it one step further. Let's not just make change by giving our money away, but let's just do some different things in the process. So very cool.
And I'll jump in quickly, Danielle. You know, the examples you gave really bring it to life. And I think one of the things that we see is someone who's interested in impact investing, but is having trouble getting started. you can look to your charitable pool of dollars. It's a really, really great sandbox to start to do your first impact investment, to do your first screened investment, whatever it might be. But it can be a very non-threatening and very friendly and oftentimes like mission aligned pool to do that giving in. So we see a very common trend of I'm interested in impact investing, but I haven't quite moved forward yet. Looking to their pool of charitable dollars as a really great place to start.
Yeah, exactly. I'm glad you brought that up, Margot. Our donors actually were coming to us and saying, this is where I want to start. Why not? I have this pool of money that I know I'm going to give away. Why not invest it with the cause? So we, even at Fidelity Charitable, we increased the number of pool options we have for our donors from one impact investing option to 4. So we're hearing it from our donors. I'm sure you're hearing from your clients. And you're right, Margot. It's a great, great place to get started. So we went through a lot of different things today. We started big picture with what's the opportunity at play. We dove a little bit into how and why women are giving. We talked a little bit about the legacy that they leave and how to have that conversation. And lastly, impact investing and how do we get that conversation started. So it's so important just to, I hope the one takeaway or one of many takeaways that you have today is it all starts with just a question. It all starts engaging those female clients that we may not have had in the past. And like I said, now is more important than ever because this conversation is already happening. 50% of our donors have already had a conversation with a charitable planning conversation with their advisor. And 1 out of 2 of them had said that that discussion helped them change the way that they were planning for ongoing contributions to charity. So our donors are looking for the resources. All of you, I see all your names on this list, and I know that there are a lot of great resources already out there. So it's all about us tapping in with that conversation and really engaging them. So Margot, I'm going to actually turn it back to you now to show us 3 steps on how we can do that. What can we take away from today to get started on this conversation?
Yeah, for sure. So as you all are, you're going to exit this webinar, and then what? Like, what's your next step? And I think if we boil it down and keep it really simple, we'll sort of charge you with 3 takeaways. So the first is be proactive. So Danielle gave some really good examples about the unengaged spouse. Like, that's a really great opportunity for you all to be proactive and have the conversation with the client. So think of your clients, prospects, or donors who are the unengaged spouse. Think of women in transition. This is such a great population to have this conversation with. Transition could be divorce, transition could be marriage, transition could be a new job, transition could be retirement. So think of these profiles of women that you are working with. A woman in transition is often reflecting and thinking about what's next. And it's a great opportunity to engage them around a charitable planning conversation. Um, think of women you engage with who sit on boards. Think of women you know who volunteer. Think of women you know who give to charity on a regular basis. So these are all the profiles of people that we encourage you to be proactive with. And hopefully you're scribbling down on your notepad here, 2 or 3 names of people that you say, yeah, that person is a really obvious person. She sits on boards, she volunteers, and she's recently divorced. Like, that's a great person to think about reaching out to. So that's number 1. Identify a few folks and be proactive in reaching out. Number 2 is, as you're thinking about your plan for the year, I know it's already almost April, which is hard to believe, but think about, I always encourage people to pick 1 or maybe 2 ways that you will bring up the charitable planning conversation and do it in a very consistent and repeatable way. So if you picked 10 ways, likely you're not going to stick to it. So if you pick 1 or 2, I think it's pretty, that could be sort of one of your charges, is to hold yourself accountable. So some of those consistent, repeatable ways you might bring up this conversation, it might be in an annual review. So you have an annual review with your client. You likely have a checklist of things that you review with them. If it's not on there currently, add on charitable giving. That might be one thing you do. Maybe for you, it's every time a client says, gosh, I need to review my estate plan. Or it might be, can we take a look at my beneficiaries? People's wheels are turning about their legacy, about their planning. I think a really good entry point is thinking about these clients I mentioned earlier, but the folks going through a life event. So a client who recently had a big liquidity event, it's a great opportunity to talk to them about this. Someone who is, again, going through a transition, a marriage or a divorce, a retirement, it's a great opportunity. So if you think of some of these things, I also encourage you to keep your eyes and your ears open. In your community, you might see, oh, so-and-so is leading a fundraiser in town. That light bulb should go off in your head, right? That's a perfect person to talk to about charitable planning. So you might identify one or maybe two of those entry points where you will consistently and repeatedly bring up the charitable conversation. And then last, you are not alone. So we are dedicated resources here to support you every step of the way. I shared our Family Forward guide earlier, and we'll be sure to send that out to you as a follow-up, but we have a tremendous amount of resources, and we are here as dedicated support for you and for your clients, prospects, and your donors. So with that, I thank you tremendously for your time today. Thank you for your engagement. Thank you for celebrating Women's History Month with us here at Fidelity Charitable. And I will let Danielle close us out regarding CE credit.
Yes, thanks, Margot. So we will be following up with an email, like Margot said, with a lot of great resources. In that email will be a link where we'll ask for you to go in and submit your CFP ID. And we will go ahead and we will gather that and we will submit that to the board next week. So as soon as that email goes out, hopefully by the end of the day today, we will be sending that link. So please feel free to do that by the end of the week so we can submit that next week. But thank you all so much for joining on. I hope you enjoyed the content, the music. Happy Women's History Month, and we look forward to speaking with you soon.
Thank you.
Thanks.